Yes!
Hey, welcome to the Blue Review. The last time that we talked to you guys was after the parade and the Dodgers had just won the World Series. It kind of feels like the Dodgers won a World Series again, Parker, because Edwin Diaz is a Dodger, the best closer in baseball right now, has been for quite some time, is now a Dodger on a 3-year, $69 million deal. Parker, Timmy Trumpets is coming to LA.
He's on his way. It's only fitting, right? You know, it's Hollywood. We got everything that the superstars want. We want the best entrances. We want the best hype. We want the best commercials. Everything you could think of, the Dodgers, they get. The fans, they want. Dodgers provide. And here we are, Timmy Trumpets and Edwin Diaz on their way to LA. And I think, Greg, I mean,
I need lasers.
Listen,
I know.
Lasers. I got to give.
Yeah, there you go. That's a win. A win. Lasers are for winners, and getting Edwin Diaz is a big old win.
Massive win. There's no other way to put this. I think we're going to have a whole bunch to talk about, breakdown with Edwin Diaz, but this is all I want to say to start this episode. The Dodgers make the right moves consistently. The organization is the best in class worldwide, and they showed why today. Every winner meetings should be like this, said Kike, and he put it best.
Yeah, so I also saw in the chat, no Marcus J detail. So Marcus was asked to come on. He was not available until 12 o'clock. We have a live show with Mason and Ireland at 12 o'clock. So this was the only time that we could have done it, unless we did it in the morning tomorrow. But we felt as if doing it right after it all happened and right after Sedano and Cap show was just a little bit better. So Marcus is not going anywhere. He will be back as soon as possible. But let's get into Edwin Diaz of it all right now. So Diaz is, by the way, he's a 3-time All-Star. He's been a Cy Young candidate. The best he ever got was in the top 8, which is still pretty damn good for a closer. He's been in MVP conversations. He wins closer or reliever of the year a few times. What he does is he is a power pitcher in the back end of the bullpen. And I don't know if I'm like coming through cleanly or not, but if I'm not, sorry. Either way, power pitcher, strikeout pitcher, the type of guy that you really like in the back end of your bullpen. Instead of, like Tanner Scott was who he was the best closer in baseball the year prior to that. But Edwin Diaz has been right there for the last few years.
Well, when you say it in that kind of way, it's like, hold on, we're foreshadowing for something that we don't hope for, which is that Edwin Diaz, what he did last year, coming off of obviously the hip injury and celebrating the Puerto Rican win. And I mean, what he did last year, I think, was one of arguably his best seasons, and he's already had.
It might have been his best
first
season.
Teams. Yeah. So the comparison to Scott, I agree. I agree with you that, Dodgers went out, got the best move. I think with Scott, though, he's a little more maybe one-dimensional, and it was just his fastball was at the best when he was with, his last year before the Dodgers got him. But Edwin has an arsenal that we don't think we've seen since guys like Prime Kenley, and obviously I hate to say the name, but like Hader.
Gagne, would you put him in the Gagne character? The
Yes.
guy that can just strike dudes out at will, seemingly. So put it this way. He struck out 98 batters last year. He struck out over 100 batters twice in his career. What I mean by like the up and down of it, including Tanner Scott, is not that I think he's going to be Tanner Scott, is that all closers are kind of an up and down thing. If you go just by ERA, which is not indicative of really a lot of things, but it is one thing you look at. He went from 279 in his rookie year to 327, down to 196, up to 559, down to 175, up to 345, down to 131. He got hurt. Then he was at a 352, and then last year at a 163. So he's a guy that is going to fluctuate year by year on his ERA. So if you're just going to look at ERA, I would almost expect him to give up some runs based on that. However, but that's just the past. No matter what, that's a guy you can trust when you put him in a game. He may give up a run every once in a while, but at the same time, it's better than what you would have had with a Tanner Scott or Blake Trinan or somebody along that ilk.
Yeah, as we know now, after kind of the first few days of winter meetings and the last couple of weeks of just talks, we know that they've been talking to a lot of high leverage relievers. Now, what was funny to me though, And those names being like Devin Williams before he signed. I know they had talks with Robert Suarez as well. So they're talking with the best players in baseball just because that's what the Dodgers do. But what's funny is that going into winter meetings, all the conversations that, Friedman and everybody in the front office had is that they're going to be kind of low in terms of like they're not going to make a big splash. They were talking about how they're just going to try to be a little calm, even though a high leverage reliever would be nice, downplaying a lot of it. And then here they go, just the best closer in, at least on the market. You could have arguments who's the best in the game at the current moment.
Johan Duran, like there's a bunch of guys that are out there, yeah.
But yeah, the fact that they were like, hey, maybe we'll see what we'll do. We'll see what we do. And then boom, make the biggest move. It's so typical of Dodgers to just, we don't know. And then, yeah, we're making the splash. And this is probably the most impactful signing of the offseason. There's been other signings quite literally today. The Phillies brought back Schwarber. But the fact that the Dodgers got what they were kind of lacking and they're back-to-back champs already, most impactful signing of the offseason for sure.
Yeah, you have to look at it that way because if you went into your postseason, remember we did this whole thing, the Bergman plan, like what was it called, like the BPP
Bergman piggyback plan, yeah.
Bergman piggyback plan. You had to do it, and they did it throughout the whole playoffs. I'm going to take complete credit for that. I brought it up in the beginning of in the middle of August, I feel like. But either way, they did it, and that's what won them the championship. That was the biggest need for this team, and they had to do it that way. That's why Roki Sasaki had to become the closer as a starter. That's why Yamamoto had to close out Game 7 and go ridiculous. Was it 3 2/3 to end Game 7? You had to find somebody that was actually going to be. Now, I've been very clear that I don't want closers, but if you can get a guy like Edwin Diaz as your closer, then you have to go out and go do it. And especially for 3 years, $23 million, that really feels like a steal of a deal for a guy that's 31. So just to talk a little bit about what he throws, he is a 2-pitch pitcher. He throws a 4-seam fastball and a slider. And that 4-seam fastball can hit 100, can go over 100. And his slider tops out probably around 90, 91, which is still really fast for a slider. So being able to keep guys off balance with a ridiculous fastball and then a nasty slider, that's really good to have. It reminds me of Eric Gagne, where he was throwing, he was going out there and he was throwing 100 miles an hour. And then he would throw a changeup that was like 80 miles an hour. It was pretty intense.
The Vulcan change. Yeah. It's such a unique, obviously a unique approach to the game. People who have been following Diaz's trend, I mean, he's very similar to, like you said, the Gagnes, the haters of the world who have that crazy 2-pitch arsenal, the high speed to a drop off. But the fact that his slider is as nasty as it is, I'm just so excited because if the Dodgers get, and I'm looking at the chat here, guys like Gratterall returning healthy, who also has some of the nastiest stuff in the game. If Scott even bounces back, I shout out to Bubba Holmberg in the chat. If Scott even bounces back to like 70 to 80% of what he once was, and he's just a high leverage arm, he doesn't have to be the closer, obviously, because you got the best closer in the game. Now you have less pressure on you. You can be what you are more comfortable with. They might have the best bullpen in the game. I mean, you're going to have young guys who aren't ready to be starters just yet, like Wroblewski, who can still pull up in the bullpen. It's very dangerous what the Dodgers are doing for the rest of the league. And all those people complaining, we're saying this all summer long, all the leading into the World Series, every episode, we had to talk about how, yes, the Dodgers are spending a lot of money, but so could every other team. I mean, the Blue Jays, like you said, put up competition against the Dodgers. You said that in the Sedano and Cap. How'd they get there? Spent a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, money is just part of the things you have to do. But I love the fact you talk about Tanner Scott too. If we've talked about this already, that was your guy, by the way. Which, sorry, chose poorly in that one.
Still believe.
No, but I think you're right though. I absolutely think you're right. I think this year you're going to see a different Tanner Scott. The stuff was there. It was just getting smacked around, and he wasn't able to locate the way he wanted to. He was actually too much inside the strike zone when he wanted to be a little bit outside the strike zone and get guys to chase. He just wasn't making guys chase, and they were laying off it. And then when he did get something in the middle, they were just destroying it. So he was just, the way he put it, I'm the unluckiest pitcher in baseball. Like that's how he felt. If he comes in and he looks anywhere close to what we knew, then you have a shutdown setup guy and a shutdown closer. You can't do much better than that. Yeah. I want to bring up Lopez. Sorry, what were we gonna say?
No, I go ahead and bring up the chat, and then I was going to get to the point that you kind of made just a second earlier about the AAV. which I thought was really unique.
Yeah, so we'll get to that in a second. So Lopez Landscaping and Gardening said, what's the difference between Roberto Suarez and Edwin Diaz? So they are very similar type pitchers, high velocity, high arm, like they are strikeout pitchers. I felt like Suarez he gives up the home run way too often. He can overpower you, but he's a little bit older also, and he also gives up the jack more often. Whereas Edwin Diaz, he offsets his fastball with the slider so well that it keeps guys off balance a lot more, and is typically a more feared closer than Suarez is, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, I think both premium relievers, obviously, who opted out this year. So it's a good question to ask, like, what's the difference, being that both had great seasons respectively for their teams. But it's also age comes into factor as well, Greg. I mean, Suarez, 34. Yep. There's a slight difference. I wouldn't be giving Suarez at 34 a 3-year deal as opposed to Diaz, who's only 31. And again, the thing is with Diaz as well, when it comes to injury history, a lot of those injuries that he's had have been very, honestly, they're unique. I don't want to say they're flukes, but they're injuries that are like, oh, like he's not out really for long because of anything for his fault. Like the celebration injury was one of the more interesting things we've seen. He was being really happy and celebrating, and then unfortunately for Mets fans, for Dodgers fans, it's like, oh, okay. But unfortunately for Mets fans, he had to sit out that whole time. It's one of those things where I think that he stays healthy and pitches consistently, where the Dodgers have kind of been lacking a healthy reliever, somebody who can just be consistent for them an entire year. So that's the most exciting thing for me. And to your point earlier about the AAV, how it feels a bit of a steal, I think that I agree, even though it actually is the record for the most highest annual AAV at 23, I think, million per year, which is just wow. The fact that we're paying the highest ever for a reliever annually, at least, and it's still a steal because he's that good, and the way that it fits with this Dodger squad, I think, is why it's the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's after they gave Tanner Scott the 4-year deal that if you put Tanner Scott and Edwin Diaz together, they've spent $141 million on closers over the last 2 years. So they are really trying to shore that up, when in the past, we've always talked about the Dodgers being the team that kind of goes away from the old school closer role, which I still kind of like. They have a fireman. That's why Evan Phillips was kind of going up and down. He'd go into different positions, but it's really about who you want in what position. So that's how I've always felt about it. But this is now a sign that the Dodgers are going directly to that closer. They want Edwin Diaz to be there. Last year, they wanted Tanner Scott to be there. Before, it's been Blake Trinan that they wanted to be there. So they're going to the more typical version of because they're looking for it. And those all seemed like patchwork things, even though I technically really like the fireman stuff, because sometimes the most important 3 outs are in the 7th inning. So would you want Edwin Diaz getting your the 1, 2, 3 out of the Phillies in the 7th inning, and then have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in 8 and 9? Which seems a little bit more doable. You know what I'm saying? So that's a very Dodger way of looking at things. They are just showing us now they want a closer.
So speaking of Dodgers' way of doing things, I want to ask, because I saw that Reezy in the chat here brings up a great point, that the Mets offer wasn't far off. He chose to come here. It's the idea of that, like, people want to come to LA. I know I made the point in our group chat earlier this morning, and maybe I was being a little silly about it, but there's some grounds to it. The fact that the Dodgers took on his brother, who's a reclamation project, and they gave him a chance. They said, hey, let's help you get back to form. That could mean something to Edwin. But just the organizational structure, the fact that the Mets offer, I believe, was maybe 63. I'll go fact check myself. 63 mil. Let's see. I think Graham helped me up here. Yeah, here we go. 66 mil with slight deferrals. The fact that the Dodgers were just like, I mean, we can up that a little bit and give you better quality of life. We got you. That's just a testament to this organization.
I think it says a little bit about both. And you know what? You say you were joking about it, but I actually fully believe that had something to do with it. If the Dodgers would have treated Alexis Diaz as somebody just like a lesser than, and just kept him in the minors and said, no, okay, you don't got it, that they didn't try to fix him, that was all done on purpose. Everything is done for a reason in my mind, that they go and they say, hey, like it's very LeBron-esque, or it's very, everything you do is for, it's like when teams hire a guy's dad, like the Knicks hired Jalen Brunson's dad, and then Jalen went to the Knicks and he stayed with them. All of that. Those all have meaning. So if you do that, Giannis Antetokounmpo keeping Thanasis and his brothers there with him in Milwaukee is because he wants to be comfortable. So that the fact that Alexis Diaz was here, I'm not sure if he's still a part of the organization or not. I have to look into it. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he was here, was treated well, was given a shot, and then it made him say, oh, that seems like a good place to go play. And also look at what the Mets are doing. They just spent so much money, more than the Dodgers last year, if you don't count the deferrals. But they spent a ton of money last year, and they didn't even make the playoffs. They went and got Juan Soto and didn't make the playoffs. So in his mind, he's like, look, we got this team. We got everything going on here. But at the same time, I'm going to go to Los Angeles. I'm going to go to Los Angeles where they just won back-to-back. And what's the obvious thing that they're missing? A dominant closer. I can go there and have the best shot to win a World Series, because it's not happening here if we're not even making the playoffs.
Yeah, as Stone Cold says so, that's the bottom line. Edwin Diaz just did not want to be a Met. He wanted to be a Dodger, just as a lot of other people do in the baseball world. A lot of other players from other countries want to be a Dodgers player because of the historical, context, and other players who just rave about being on this organization. There's no way that Kike Hernandez wasn't at least hitting up his Puerto Rican brother and being like, hey, it's a great time out here. I'm just assuming here, this is not factual statement, but based off of his tweets afterwards.
You're getting aggregated, Parker.
I know, I'm going to get aggregated. But his story was great. If you go look up Kike's IG story recently, it says F around and find out. he's back to his antics, and I love it. But yeah, I'm looking at some of the New York tweets and the angles from New York.
So mad, I bet.
They are very mad, and they're getting mad at the organization. And I would tell them personally, like, I don't necessarily know if this is 100% on David Stearns and the organization. They did express, I know the New York Post expressed that there's wiggle room to go higher, and they didn't. But this feels that he just didn't circle back to the Mets and give them the last answer. I think Anthony DiComo over there on Twitter did say that his understanding is no, Diaz did not circle back. So again, like Stone Cold said, bottom line is Edwin Diaz wanted to be a Dodger.
Yeah, I mean, him, what's his name? Pete Alonso is not going to be going back there this year. So that team is going to look very, very different this year. They'll still go out, they'll spend, they'll get the guys that they want. But if you're going to go from Devin Williams, I think is a very good pitcher. I just don't think he's been very good the last couple of years, and he looked terrible in New York. So is he going to make up for the loss of Edwin Diaz? He might have a great year and be that guy that he was a long time ago or a couple of years ago. But I'm going to put my money on Edwin Diaz being the guy over Devin Williams. So coming here makes the most sense. Now, I wanted to ask you, Parker, do you think this is the end? Do you think this is the last thing that the Dodgers do that's a big, impactful signing in the winter meeting? Let's just stick to the winter meetings right now.
Okay. If we're to go that route when it comes to in the winter meetings, then I think that my answer would be yes. This is besides maybe a marginal move, like you're going to see some guys released, perhaps just some roster spots open up. But I don't see any big splashes in this specific winter meetings. I think that they got the number one thing that they needed, a high leverage reliever. Well, it's 1A, 1B, as we know, with that outfield help. So to that point, I think that they're going to kind of wait things out a little bit, test the waters, see how things and other teams are moving before they go out, because I believe that sometimes some of those outfield helps might be able to be found in trades as well. So there's just too many options, I think, for them to make a decision this quickly in the winter meetings, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't disagree with you. I just feel like if they're going to do things, I think they want to get this stuff done early. I think that's the way Andrew Friedman seems to kind of be. I mean, he waits on the big names. He'll wait on Shohei, even though I think Shohei was 2 years ago today, like on the dot.
I think it was.
So that is, they like to make moves now. So I don't know if it'll be a trade. You can't predict trades, but if there is a trade, I could imagine Teo being a part of a trade for somebody. That's somebody that I could see being moved. I also could see them just signing an outfielder in some way and signing somebody to be that everyday center fielder. Now, who that person is, I don't know. I know they've been talking about Byron Buxton, although I think Buxton may be off the table. I know they've been talking about Harrison Bader, that had a pretty good year last year when he finally got to New York and was actually playing well. So, or was it New York? Or was it Philly? I think it was in Philly.
Yeah.
He moved around so much. I don't know. So either way, I think it was Philly. It was Philly. Yeah. So when those types of guys could be signed or whatever it happens to be. So I think you could see one of them. Cody Bellinger now is somebody that I feel like would actually make a lot of sense when I didn't. It was like a month ago after Travis Rogers, he told it to me, and I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I don't like taking other people's thoughts, but the way he posed it to me, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. He can play so many positions. The Dodgers love positionality. He can play all three outfield spots. He can also play first base. If Freddie needs a day off, he can just slide down to first base and be totally fine there. If Freddie retires at some point, which is not too far off, he can slide down to first base. He's not the guy that we saw when he was here before. He's not going to hit 200 and he's going to be trying to swing for 50 home runs. He's going to hit 25, 30 home runs, and he's going to hit 270. He's just a solid everyday player. I feel like that is a good option to come back to the Dodgers.
I love it. I actually would love for, Cody Love to come on back, no pun intended. What's tricky though is just, you're getting those, here we go. If we're to base these points off of how they've been speaking before the winter meetings, then the answer would probably be yes, they are going to go make a big trade, possibly see Teo and some starting pitchers go for a higher, either a higher younger guy like Jared Duran, or somebody like, even I think Jake Myers had a really good year when he came back from his injury with the Astros. Another name to look out for. It's very likely because they said they weren't going to make a crazy move for a high leverage arm just yet. And then the next day, they do. Friedman says the other day, I think it was yesterday actually, we're not looking to trade Teo. And then who knows? Yeah. So I could see it happening, and there are so many names that could be linked to them. I love the Cody angle. But again, somebody who's not as maybe sexy in terms of like, hey, they have Dodgers history and stuff, like Jake Myers would be possibly a great everyday starter, in my opinion. Although, Astros, but hey, he wasn't involved with that Astros.
No, just because you're on the Astros doesn't mean you can't come here. You have to be a part of that team, that specific 2017 team that I am not okay with. And it really is just a few of those guys. But either way, I think there's things that could be moved here. It's like, so people are talking about Teo probably not being moved. I think Friedman is somebody that wants to make this team as much as best he possibly can in this exact moment. So they want to have their team and be like, we're good. Let's start tinkering when it gets to the trade deadline if we have to, but we prefer not to pay the overinflated prices of the trade deadline. So getting it all done now is typically the way he likes to roll, from what I've seen.
For anybody keeping score, and again, as we always say on this station, if you're keeping score, then what are you doing watching? The group that they have right now in the outfield, Teo, Tommy Edman, Pages, and Call. And I know that there's a few others who obviously are young and prospects who are top 100 prospects in the league, but they're not going to be everyday starters on this Dodger squad. So yeah, they're lacking, and that's just what it is. Could see some moves happening, but I don't know, Greg. It's going to be an interesting next few days for the Dodgers because this starts. I mean, I get Schwarber was first, but I think this is the real domino effect. Now that Diaz is signed, the market's set for higher leverage relievers. I guess the market's now set for outfielders too. We now know what a slugger will get, somebody who strikes out a lot but just gets a ton of home runs. It's going to be interesting to see where the Dodgers go.
But he's a tip. We were talking about it in just a chat between us about the difference between Kyle Schwarber and other dudes. Like, he's strictly a power guy. He's like an Adam Dunn type player where he's going to hit you a lot of home runs. Not great in doing anything else where he gets on base a decent amount because he either walks or hits a home run. But besides that, he strikes out a ton, just like Shohei. But he strikes out, to your point when you're talking, he strikes out more than Shohei. And there's a difference between Shohei striking out and Schwarber striking out, So that team, they got him for a pretty good deal over in Philly. But to one of the points that you made about them saying, the Doc and Friedman saying all these things about Brandon Gomes about, oh, we're not doing anything. They lie. Like, we've seen this 1,000. Just put it straight as it is. They lie. They lie about their injuries. They lie about what they're going to do. Why would they go and be like, yeah, we're going to get Edwin Diaz. Don't worry about that. We'll make that happen. We're looking for a closer to get to lose whatever leverage that they have. So no, whatever they say, take it with a grain of salt and realize that the next day something else is going to happen.
Yeah. And lastly, on the Bellinger aspect of it all, if he were to obviously sign long-term, let's say he gets a similar deal to Schwarber, I think he'd probably get more. I'd say if he goes for 6 years, look at maybe like a 165, somewhere around that range, 27 to 30 annual, just because like you said, to your point, I mean, Belly does strike out still a lot, but he does a lot of other stuff on the field in terms of elite outfield and, still getting some, base on balls and everything. So that's the idea that you get here is that, I just don't know where they're going to go.
Yeah.
But for the memes, I want Cody back.
I mean, I think now the more I've thought about it, the more I think Cody would be a great fit back here in LA, and the redemption story and all that kind of good stuff. But we have plenty more winter meetings, plenty more things going on. And by the way, so Parker, myself, Marcus, yes, when he can, we're going to do these little intermittent blue reviews whenever something big happens. So we're not going to do one every day just to talk Dodgers with you, but we do want to be here for you whenever something big does happen. So expect it anytime you see a big move, maybe not one of the smaller trades or smaller signings, but a big, nice, good signing. We will try to do as many blue reviews as possible. So for Parker Bell, for myself, for Marcus Grant, who is not here, thank you for joining us on an emergency blue review, or as Sedano calls it, a bluer review. Thank you very much. And we'll be back with you tomorrow on Sedano and Cap. You got to make sure you get to Mason and Ireland coming up in an hour, because they're going to be all over the Edwin Diaz conversation on a lit Tuesday, by the way. So thank you guys. See ya.
God, it's a good day to be a Dodger fan. I used to play trumpet, by the way. I might need to whip this out just for you, Edwin.